then Lieutenant Governor Zell Miller about getting a technical college in Sandersville. Zell Miller ran for governor in 1990 and won. And soon after he called up Pop. Governor Miller asked Pop to serve on the technical college system with Georgia board. And my dad hemmed and hawed. And Governor Miller finally said, "Ben, do you want that technical college in Sandersville?" To which my father said, "Yes, sir, I do." And Zell said, "Well, good. We'll see you at next week's technical college board meeting." He loved the mission of TCSG. I was so proud to be a part of giving people the training so they could find a job and thrive. He was a very generous man. It was well documented about his love and support of Emory. And this is where I would like to invoke a quote from the most generous Emory donor, Mr. Robert Woodruff, when he stated, "There is no limit to what a man can do or how far he can go if he doesn't mind who gets the credit." This quote captures my father because he wanted to be a part of things, but didn't seek the limelight. This was especially true for local projects in Sandersville, efforts at this church or Brentwood School. He helped, but it was behind the scenes, and it made him happy. In his later years, he gained great pleasure from these 7 grandchildren. He enjoyed attending their events when he could and watching them grow up. Sometimes I would just catch him smiling at them as he watched or listened to them interact. He will forever be their pops. Lastly, I want to thank the employees of the Sandersville Railroad. I'm just not an eloquent enough person to pen how grateful I am to you for the love, the respect, and the thoughtfulness you displayed toward him every day. He loves you guys. Pop literally came to work until he couldn't anymore, and it was because he loved the railroad industry and our people. Mr. Ben, as he was affectionately referred to by everyone here in Sandersville, truly enjoyed being a part of the day-to-day activities, but it ran deeper. Pop thought the railroad worker epitomized the American work ethic. We will serve our customers rain, sleet, snow, or shine. And by providing that service to our shippers, the Sandersville Railroad was and is a vital link to the transportation network of this country. That's pretty good stuff. In late March, I called Pop on a Monday, and I asked if he was up for riding around that afternoon. Pop loved, as many of you know, to check on things, as he would say. I picked him up on a brilliant spring afternoon, and we rode to the transload site, then did the loop at the chip mill. Next we went out to the new track we're building east of town, and then parallel the new Sandersville Timber truck route that's being constructed. This put us back on the Georgia State Route 242. And as we headed back to town, the gates dropped at the 242 crossing as the AIC train approached. We stopped, and I rolled those windows down, and we sat there together, father and son, mentor and mentee, and we watched that train. After it had passed, Bob turned to me and he said, "You know, it never gets old." So as we mourn, we must rejoice in the memories of my father and the lessons that he taught us, as they will never get old.
A reading from John chapter 14, verses 1 through 7. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, but I have told you that I go to prepare place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Jesus said to him, I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you will know my Father also. From now on, you do know him and have seen him.
A reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 13. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends, but as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I become an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in the mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, and the greatest of these is love.
Oftentimes as a minister, I think about how often we use certain verses of Scripture at funeral occasions and memorial services. One that we hear a great deal is from 2 Timothy, as Paul is literally speaking his last words to his son in the faith, Timothy, where he says, "The time of my departure is near. I have fought a good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will reward to me on that day, and not to me only, but also to all those who've longed for his appearing." Ms. Nancy, I want to say to you that it's a great honor for me to be the minister of this church at this time. I found myself growing more and more protective of Mr. Ben as I could see him weakening and slowing down. And the last number of special occasions like Christmas or birthdays, I found myself wanting to share gifts with him. Often a man in Mr. Ben's place finds people asking something of him, and I wanted to mark those occasions by giving something to him instead. Aristotle wrote that man is at his best when he is doing his best at what he loves doing best. That is certainly true of Mr. Ben Tarbutton Jr. Mr. Ben was fortified by his deep personal commitment to the dignity of work, his love of the United States of America, his love for his family, his love for his church, and his service to his community. Mr. Ben was born in Sandersville, and although he traveled widely, he lived out the bulk of his life right here. And those who knew him and grew up with him remained close to him. That speaks a great deal about his character. He would tell me stories about his childhood in this church. One of the stories that fascinated me most was how he talked about when the church burned in the late 1930s. The cornerstone of that reconstruction project can be seen right out the window here at the end of this connector where the skylights are. The church burned in August, and in the providence of God, the minister who was here had had a previous background in architecture and construction. And the church rallied together and they rebuilt this sanctuary in its earliest form over part of the foundation of that church that burned. You can go under this building today and find parts of that foundation still present. That isn't just true architecturally, it's true of the people who have been a part of this wonderful church. And truly, Mr. Ben was a pillar of this community and a pillar of this church. He traveled a wide road of life, and along the way he enriched the lives of many people. And he leaves for us a treasure trove of memories of his leadership, his achievements, and his example that will not dim with the passing of time. In railroad terms, he was like an engine that helped move this community forward in so many ways. Ben was an example of courage, of enthusiasm, and of discipline. And one of the things that I admired most about him was that you sensed very quickly that he was a man with both feet squarely on the ground. There were many qualities about him that I admired. I could watch him assess a situation, even in those advancing years. I've known him for about 4 years now. And each year he would ask me, how many years have you been here? I suppose he was thinking, maybe, how much longer do you have here? I don't know. We used to chuckle about that. But one of the most precious moments that we shared together was when we had just moved into the Heritage Hall, and we'd sort of gotten accustomed to being there. And I remember him walking up to me and looking over his glasses like that and saying, my mother always taught me to love and support my pastors, and you make that easy. That was a special moment for me. It was one of the most encouraging moments that I've ever had in ministry, and certainly in the 4 years that thus far I've served this church. Mr. Ben's parents taught he and his brother Hugh a deep-seated work ethic, and they passed that work ethic along to their children. Mr. Ben believed in the United States of America, and he felt privileged to serve in the United States Navy during the Korean War. Ben was born with a great mind, and he possessed a wonderful ability to remember personal details of people's lives. We would talk sometimes, and we would be removed from a conversation perhaps 6 months, 8 months, or a year, and he would say, the last time we talked about your family, you told me this or that, and he would reconnect to a conversation we had had some time before. Always personable. I said at the graveside committal that we had back in June, the same week that he passed away, that he was a person that you could watch interact with people of all stations of life, and you always sensed that he had a respect for people wherever they were in their station of life. He was born with a tremendous mind and could assess situations quickly. He treasured you grandchildren. He treasured you. I often saw him come to Ben the Forest basketball games, and I knew that it couldn't be comfortable for him to sit on those stands for such a long period of time. One of his favorite phrases during the ball game was, "Excuse my French, preacher." He would sit in front of me and turn around and ask me to excuse his French because he was getting into the ball game. He loved you. He treasured you. He especially was grateful for the job that his children did and you in-laws have done in raising your children. He said, my grandchildren have such good manners. That was important to Mr. Ben. The little things in life were important to him. Probably as a pastor, the thing I would want you to know and hear this morning is that Mr. Ben knew how blessed he was, and he was tremendously generous. Some of you who have worked for the railroad through the years, like David Ray, have told me how good this family has been to him, how good the Sandersville Railroad has been to him. And always, I've heard of some of you maybe having medical difficulties or situations arising in your personal life, and if there was some way he could connect you with someone who could help you or step up the help you were receiving, he was always eager to do that. I walked in the other day to the railroad office and was talking with Ben III, and I said, Ben, how does it feel to walk into that other office on the other side? And he said, I'm not going in there very much right now. And I can understand that. It is a game changer when your parents leave. It is a game changer. Your father, your mother are the rock of your life, and suddenly you find yourself with a kind of vulnerability when your parents leave this world. Mr. Ben was a man who was tremendously generous in a heartfelt and very real and sincere way. In fact, we have representatives of Epworth by the Sea, and it was Ben's father, Ben Sr., who played a key role in the founding of the Methodist Center at Epworth by the Sea, and Ben and Nancy have continued that legacy throughout their years together. It's an awesome thing to me to call to mind that Mr. Ben was baptized right here in this very church. He planted some of the trees that are down in front of the daycare center, or preschool, I should say, and he pointed out to me what some of the vegetation was that was growing up them, and he explained that it was a parasite and we needed to try to get that under control, and he was able to name what it was, and always very specific, and always very methodical and plain in what he was trying to communicate to you. He seemed to look for ways to bless the church. He was proud of the role that his parents had played in the Sandersville United Methodist Church, and he was especially proud of the vital role that the foundation had played in the life of this church. That was his baby, if you will. In fact, it was interesting to watch Mr. Ben methodically when he began to realize that he was declining. He announced to us at the foundation meeting that he would be stepping down as the president of the foundation. And in the unfolding of time, I think he had a sense that things were ramping up for him. There was that sense. I think all of us the last year and a half or so have been very concerned about him as we've seen him and interacted with him. I was privileged to go and see him on his 90th birthday, and on that day I had given him vest, and it was March, and I thought he's not going to want to wear a vest in the springtime, so I went over to a jeweler over in Milledgeville, and I got a watch for him that was a solar watch, and he was fascinated with that. You could just sit it out in the sunlight or in the light, and it would charge itself automatically. You didn't have to wind it, and I had noticed that he usually wore watches with leather bands on them. I'm sure he had a nicer one than that, but in the day-to-day, he was very unpretentious. And in fact, Rosa was telling me that if he got a pair of shoes he really loved, he would keep them and keep getting soles and heels put on over and over and over again. And I'm about to take some to have that done, and I'm sure I'm going to think about it when I drop them off and when I pick them up. He was proud of that foundation. And may I say to you that if you want something to share in that's close to Mr. Ben's heart, the Sandersville Foundation has already done so much for this church. Nearly $700,000 it has generated to the upkeep of this church. The future of the church was important to him. We were talking one day and watching some children go up the stairs up into the second level of Heritage Hall. And I had just told a story about an elderly man who had planted some orange trees in rural Texas, and his sister-in-law got on to him and said, "You're never going to live long enough to eat those oranges." And he said, "Yes, but somebody will." And he loved that story, and he said that there'll be children moving up and down these steps long after I'm gone. And it gave him a great deal of satisfaction. It was almost as though that was a kind of final project that he wanted to be heavily involved in. Mr. Ben and I could carry on personally easy conversations about a wide range of subjects. And I have to tell you this. One of my last visits with him, he was using this back scratcher. And I was telling him, I said, "Mr. Ben, you know, I have a problem, my back itching sometimes, and I just have to do like a bear and get up against the corner somewhere at the house." And he said, "Well, here, take this." And he showed me how it operated. And then he looked over those glasses again and winked at me and said, "It's got a hand on it." He says, "Notice it's a lady's hand." visit was when we were all so concerned about what any of us might bring into the home there. And I just wanted so much to go by and visit with Ben and Nancy. And I was so glad to be able to see him just those few days before he passed early the next week. He turned 90 on Friday, March the 20th, and we had planned to honor him on March the 22nd, but that was not to be. It's hard to imagine our lives and the way they've been interrupted. In fact, normally, there would be hundreds of people in this building. We couldn't fit them all in this sanctuary. We would have them on closed circuit television in other parts of the building. But our lives have all been jolted by those events. And who could have thought between March the 15th and March the 22nd, we would all be asked to shelter in place and not even go to church. But that's the way it happened. I went to see him on